Animal welfare. All I can say is that every time a big truck drives by with pigs inside of it, I do cry, and they look very sad.
Can you tell me what the Farm Bill is?
Nope. Farm Bill? Yeah, nope.
Animal welfare? Well, I assume that's when an animal family is below the poverty line and receives additional support from the government. So the Farm Bill is the man who has worked on the farm for 80 years.
Tell me, what do you know about Proposition 12 in California?
Oh, nothing.
I know nothing about that. I'm so sorry.
Animal welfare, like how they take care of the animals. You know, agricultural and food things.
I don't know what the Farm Bill is.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Contemporary Issues in Agriculture podcast. I'm your co-host, Sidney Schnor.
And I am your co-host, Jessica Rodman. Today, we will be talking to Taylor and Madeline about sustainability. We've got some really interesting conversations looking at sustainability within the United States and outside the United States. Should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's right. We're excited to hear what this episode has in store for us.
Welcome to another episode of the Contemporary Ag Issues podcast series. My name is Taylor Sublett, a junior majoring in agricultural communications with a minor in animal science from Riverside, Iowa, one of the co-hosts of today's podcast episode, Sustainability Across Borders.
And my name is Madeline Klemme, a junior double majoring in agricultural communication and international agriculture with a minor in animal science, originally from Preston, Iowa, and I am the other co-host of today's podcast episode. Today, we are going to be comparing sustainable agriculture between Greece and the United States. In this episode, we'll hear from a wide range of different guests who will share stories, insights, and experiences. Whether it's the ancient terraced lands of Greece or the vast fields of the American heartland, our goal is to shed light on the dynamic world of sustainable agriculture. This topic is crucial as it allows us to understand diverse agricultural practices, learn from each other's experiences, and explore innovative solutions to global challenges. Not only are Taylor and I excited to learn more about this topic, but we are also excited to share this information with farmers domestically and globally. So join us as we dig deep into the soil of sustainability, where olive groves, meet cornfields, and traditional farming connect with modern ag technology.
Now that you've had a taste of what we will be discussing today, it's time to dive into our first speaker, and what better way to begin our journey than by hearing from someone who was born and raised in Palamas, Greece. Without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Sotiris Arkantoulis to the podcast. We are excited to hear his perspective and knowledge on sustainable agriculture for both Greece and the United States.
Start from the very, very beginning. I grew up in a cotton farm in central Greece. You guys visited that one?
Yeah.
And this is where I got my first stimulus to get involved with agriculture. Joined Iowa State University in 2012 as a postdoc research associate. In 2014, I accepted an offer for an assistant professor of integrated cropping systems. 2018, I became associate, and 2023, full professor. So right now in my lab, we do research on cropping systems, the plant, the soil, and the climate, how all these interact, and we try to figure out the best practices to maximize profitability and to minimize the environmental nitrogen losses, water losses, minimize the inputs that we put in agriculture, and we want to keep everyone happy, the farmers and the environment. That's what we do in the lab.
Yeah, so with our topic being sustainability, could you provide what you believe sustainable agriculture is in the United States and Greece?
Coming from both worlds and experience agriculture in both places, I'm telling you, sustainability has different meanings here, different meanings back in Greece. And the reason is the scale. And the reason, second reason, is the way that agriculture has been structured. Scale is everything that it matters. It's a different thing to have 1,000 acres. It's a different thing to have 10 acres. So you think about, no matter the size, you have to bring some money to, you have a house, you have kids, go to school, go to wherever. So you need to make some profits out of it. And different ways of thinking, they have the same goal at the end. Fortunately, unfortunately, we need to do more work on sustainability, how we define it, and what is truly sustainable or not. I will give you one word, one color, to me what is sustainable. This is the color green. I want to see the soil always green, always happy. No matter where I am, everything to be green. That's a good sign of sustainability.
All right, so growing up in Greece, I guess, you know, on the cotton farm, what type of, did you guys have any like sustainability practices, or I guess did your neighbors or anything like that, I guess? And if not, I guess maybe could you talk about maybe like some of the ones that you do know that maybe other farmers in the region have or practice?
Yeah. When I grew up in Greece, the word sustainability was not that popular. It was basically not present in the vocabulary at that time. It was nothing. Everything was about production. How do we make more? How do we increase the productivity of the farm? How do we increase the profitability? When it comes to sustainable practices, although they were not talking directly about that, they were inferencing on that through some examples about human health. Like to maintain a healthy cotton farm, you have to apply many insecticides. And some of these insecticides today are not part of the program, are totally outside. It was really harmful for humans. So they were talking, referring to sustainable practices by bringing example from human health. One was the pesticides and insecticides, and the other one was the quality of the water. They were measuring nitrates in the groundwater, and it was above the threshold. And guys, you need to cut some of this, cut some of that. And one practice, it was a volunteer program where farmers had to apply 50% less nitrogen fertilizer in order to meet the criteria. So not all of the farmers, many farmers adopted this practice. My dad, it was one of the first. But I'm gonna be honest and say that whoever filled an application to be part of this project was taking a good check from the European Union. So you were losing production, but you were getting the extra from, yeah. So reduction in nitrogen fertilizer was one. When it comes to tillage, absolutely there was no discussion on that. Maybe a little bit in areas, slopey areas, mostly for the erosion, but in my region everything is so flat, so that was out of the equation. And as long as the fuel price was reasonable levels, they had no problem doing 1, 2, or 3 tillage passes for the field. There was no discussion at that time about soil carbon. There is neither today, as far as I know, there is no much discussion about soil carbon. And the reason is the soils in Greece are very, very, very low quality in carbon. So, in other words, they have nothing to lose.
So the next question we have, you kind of touched on already. So Greece and the United States have very different agricultural landscapes, which obviously presents with a lot of differences in their sustainability practices. How do cultural and environmental factors shape sustainable farming practices in these two regions?
Scale matters a lot, and if we are gonna make some impact on sustainability, the perfect place for this to be done is here because of the scale where things can be implemented. You can get 2 US farmers, which can be equivalent to getting 100 Greek farmers. Much easier to convince 2 people rather than 100 people. Probably, I say, 200 people in Greece to implement and make the same change in the landscape. Convincing farmers to go after sustainable practices is hard because farmers, they want to say they want, it's not like they don't want it, they want it, but these guys are gonna risk their operation. These guys, they want insurances, so like it's not, they are gonna take risk, right? They have to be compensated. We need to rethink how we try to convince farmers to adopt sustainability. We have to incentivize them more. I will say way more than is today's programs here or in the United States.
So, being an educator of agronomy, what message or tip would you like to convey to our audience about the importance of sustainability in agriculture?
So, we should look at sustainability by having different indicators, and we should not forget or ignore some very basic indicators, and this is the productivity, because sustainability is important. We want to maximize efficiencies and to be super efficient, but we should think of any trade-offs that this may come up. If we maximize efficiency and we lose food production, other important economic and socioeconomic aspects is going to emerge. So we need to think that in a balance with other major priorities in agriculture. Yes, to maximize efficiencies, improve sustainability, but also at the same time maximize and maintain crop production and food production. We don't want to fix a problem and create another problem. That's a message I want to pass. Is look at different indicators. Sometimes people frame it under sustainability. Sometimes people separate sustainability from productivity. I prefer to have all these different indicators and check out all the boxes. The system, the agricultural system, is quite complex. If you change something, the system is going to try to find a new equilibrium. And because of the system is very complex, sometimes we don't think of everything that can happen, and we fix something, we create another problem. So this is kind of, we need to be careful. Let me put it that way.
As we continue to explore the world of sustainable agriculture in both Greece and the United States, we're delighted to have had the opportunity to learn from Dr. Arkandoulis about the complexities in this field. Now we transition to our next expert, whose insights will provide another layer of understanding on this topic. So let's get ready for another insightful conversation as we welcome Dr. David Acker.
I'm David Acker. I serve as Associate Dean for Global Engagement in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at Iowa State University. I've been here for 28 years and love it. That's the most important statement. My background is that I grew up in upstate New York, not from a farm. So I came to agriculture because I really wanted to find ways to help people get out of poverty and improve their lives. And agriculture was a great way to do that. So I slowly got involved with agriculture that way.
I guess our first question just is about sustainability and maybe like what you think it is and what you define it as. So if you just give an overview of what you believe sustainability is, just because everybody has their own, kind of definition for it.
Right. So mine is all about leaving the planet in better shape than we found it. I have grandkids, so I'm really excited about them having clean air and good farmland and things like that. So it's really all about taking care of our planet so that we can give it to the next generation in at least as good a shape. We really should be striving for leaving it in better shape. So I think that another part of that definition is it has to be environmentally sound, has to be socially acceptable, and then it has to be economically viable. Otherwise, it's not really going to work. So I think those are the main elements of sustainability for me.
So you kind of stated it in your intro that you have some experience with agriculture in the United States as well as in the country of Greece. Could you explain a little bit how you think sustainability is practiced in each of those countries, whether it's similar or different? Some things like that.
No, that's an interesting question. So I think as you saw in Greece, there are huge differences in the scale of agriculture. So the things that they can do there on a very small scale are so different than what we can do in the United States. That has pluses and minuses. They can do a lot more things with hand labor because the scale is small. They might be working on 2 acres where we might be working on 2,000. So they can do things by hand and maybe a little more intensively than we can. On the other hand, because we have larger scale, we can employ automation and some technology that isn't really viable when you have a couple of acres, like in Greece. For some of our tractors, it takes almost an acre to turn them around. And in Greece, you'd be done plowing the field in about 11 seconds. So, there's just differences in scale that are really important. I think also there are differences in the public attitude toward sustainability in Greece and in the United States. I find in Greece there's maybe a higher awareness or attention to sustainability. Mainly, I think it goes back to a long time ago when they had an environmental disaster in Greece. When Chernobyl blew, the nuclear plant, some of that stuff drifted to Greece. And so people were hyper aware of the environment and that it can make or break your life, literally. I think in the United States, we've been pretty protected from some of those things. So I don't think, when I wake up in the morning, I don't think about the environment. Maybe I should, but I don't. I think about coffee and getting to the office and a few other things before I get to environment. And that's partly because we have not been challenged so much. We have so much land. We have so many sources of clean water. I think it's just it's a little bit easier to be maybe a little bit lackadaisical about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And us definitely traveling over there, we got to see how the scale is really different. And so we kind of take for granted what we have here and just the opportunities and the equipment and how fortunate we are to have the agriculture opportunities in the United States.
That's right. We're so fortunate. I mean, just think of the land that we have in Iowa alone, the soil quality, the amount of acreage that's available for agriculture. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I remember when we heard about the organic matter over there compared to here, and that was very, very shocking.
Yes.
Even for them to hear that too, it was just very crazy.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you kind of touched on the differences between Greece and the United States based on their landscapes, but what do you think what do you think they could learn from each other? Just what one's doing better than the other and what maybe the United States can help Greece out with or vice versa.
So one thing I think we could help Greece with would be talking about how we build biosafety into like our agriculture. So, for example, when we use GMOs in this country, it's not just, off the shelf. We thought it'd be a good idea to experiment.
Yeah.
It's been very carefully regulated, very carefully tested, and they're safe. And in Greece, they have not been willing to accept GMOs, and for the most part are kind of closed to the possibility of GMOs. So I think we could help them, not telling them that our GMOs are good, because they think they've already concluded they're not good, but talk to them about how do you set up a biosafety apparatus, a procedure, so that every product, whether it be a seed or a food or a feed, is safe for humans. And I think that's where we could find some common ground, because it has to do with science-based. Greeks have a long tradition of science. They have top scientists, and I believe that they would respond very positively to that. On the other hand, I think looking at the other side, I think what Greece could help us understand are sort of the importance and really the beauty of connecting up local foods with local people. So, in Greece, you could go to a village and they have some specialty there, and it's like distributed a little bit, but not very far. And it makes it special. People go out of their way to go to that village, to drink that wine or eat that cheese. And I think that's starting in the U.S., but we haven't had a tradition of that so much. I think we could probably learn from some of their local food knowledge and how they connect it up with the culture.
I guess moving into this new question, in your opinion, what are some of the major challenges that farmers face in adopting some of these sustainable practices? It could be either, here in the United States or I guess over in Greece. I guess, what do you think some of those I guess maybe barriers are?
Yeah, I'll mention two. I think number one would be knowledge. If they don't know what some of those options are, then they can't adopt them. So regardless of where the farmer is, if they don't understand that a cover crop can pay a number of dividends in terms of soil fertility, organic matter, less erosion, some of those things, if they're not knowledgeable about that, that could be a barrier because they wouldn't adopt it because it costs a little bit more. And I think the other one would be about policy. So if the national policy supports, innovation or trying something new related to sustainability, farmers are much more likely to try it. And if there's a policy that pushes them in the other way, then they're not going to try it. So I think policy and education would be the top two things that I think of.
Yeah. I guess our last question is, if you could offer one piece of advice to whomever it may be, whether it be like producers, consumers, policy makers, or just, students in general, I guess interested in sustainable agriculture, what would it be?
Yeah. Well, the first word that comes to my mind is chill. There is such a lot, as you've noticed, there's a lot of argument about what's sustainable, what's not. You're more sustainable than and I think we just have to chill. We have to take a step back and realize that everybody's trying to do their best in this, that there isn't one winner in this, that we should be trying to figure out a way that everybody can be a winner, and we can all move our practices forward to be more sustainable. But when, we call somebody sustainable and somebody is not, there's winners and losers. I think the people who are labeled, you're not sustainable, they get discouraged, defensive, and because that might be their lifestyle. They might not have known what some of these other options are. So I think if people just take a step back, take a deep breath and realize we're all in this together, and we need less finger pointing, less lines in the sand where you got to decide, am I here or there? I don't think that's very helpful, to be honest. Yeah. And that advice could apply to a lot of different things in the world today, right?
Yeah.
Take a deep breath and
Thank you to Dr. Acker for his expertise and the experiences that he shared. Diversity of voices and perspectives enriches our understanding of this complex field. So as we transition to our next guest, we'll dive deeper into the heart of Greece's agricultural landscape.
My name is Christos Vasilikiotis. I'm a professor at Perotis College. It's a college that's part of the American. We have nice facilities. We have a working dairy farm. We have productive fields. So the college can take advantage of all these facilities for research and student training. And now I'm the head of the Sustainable Agriculture Department. And I'm also Associate Dean for Research at Perotis College. My interests are, as I said now, agroecology. And lately I've been moving on to regenerative agriculture, the idea of moving beyond sustainable and actually regenerating and doing practices that not only maintain the current state of our soils and the environment, but also improving them, creating better soils, and at the same time working with climate change, sequestering carbon, so we have a positive impact on reducing the greenhouse effect.
So first, because everybody, has a different definition, I guess, of what sustainability is and I guess how it's practiced. Could you just define in, I guess, your words what you think sustainability is and how it's practiced, whether it be abroad or I guess maybe the United States?
A very general definition of sustainable agriculture is the ability to meet today's needs of people in society's needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So it's pretty much minimizing any overuse of resources, protecting the environment, and maintaining quality. At the same time, in order to achieve this, and that's very important, I think, for sustainable agriculture, is to maintain three goals. Keep a healthy environment, maintain economic profitability for the farming systems, and also social and economic equity. The last thing, the social and economic equity, is the one that's usually not being addressed in sustainability. We normally look at the environment and profitability of the farm, but I think the social component is very important. And just in parentheses, we see that how important it is, both in the US, you have a lot of migrants coming from other countries where the socioeconomic conditions are so dire that they have to move to other places. And in Greece, we have the same thing. We have a lot of migrants from Africa, Asia, that are from countries that are being completed, their economy is being degraded, and they're trying to find a better place to survive. So they're moving over to Europe. And this is going to get worse. Africa is a really exploding population, and unless we apply sustainable agricultural practices there that also take into consideration the human factor, the social component, this is going to get worse and will create a lot of more instability around the world. So that's, now to add to that, as I mentioned earlier, one thing that's becoming now more pressing is to move beyond the sustainable definition into what we call regenerative agriculture. And there we just start improving the existing conditions because many agricultural lands have been degraded. You probably know in the US, in Greece, have the same thing, a lot of soil erosion, salinity because of overuse of fertilizers, irrigation, and practices that are not really conserving soil. So if we just maintain these degraded lands to the current state, we're not really gaining anything. So we have to try to find ways to start improving the soils. And at the same time, by doing that, most of the regenerative practices, and I can refer to a few later if you want, tend to actually capture carbon from the atmosphere, store it in the soil, and do two things, both reduce CO2 levels in the atmosphere, so greenhouse gases, but also improve soil quality and regenerate the soil. So I think now the new term is regenerative agriculture, which is sustainable with an extra effort to actually improve and regenerate what we have, both soils, water resources, and the remaining productivity of the system.
So the next question we have for you is, what traditional farming practices in Greece do you consider crucial in helping preserve the land?
But in Greece, we have a lot of traditional farming still applied. One of the biggest in terms of coverage is agroforestry, having both trees and crops, or silvopastoral, which is trees and crops and animals that are integrated. So a lot of that is still happening in Greece. It's not really recognized. People don't talk about it because it's a very traditional, small farms, primarily in mountainous areas. They don't contribute as much in the economy. They contribute to the local economy, employment, and the environment. If you think about in Greece, about almost half of the agricultural land is olive groves. So you can imagine half of the ecosystem in Greece is olive groves. So those are, majority of those are extensive, so they're very spaced very far apart, not irrigated, and not intensively managed. So those provide a lot of habitat for birds, wildlife, the flora in Greece, and so on. So these are, and then in some places, as I mentioned, having silvopastoral means the animals can graze through those. So you have an added benefit of only having, you have the olive grove, but also have grazing grounds. So you combine animal production and crop production and trees. Some places have crops they plant, otherwise just the grasses that grow, animals grazing. So these are pretty important. They're not really being promoted very much. As I said, most are smaller farms that don't have a lot of economic clout. So we don't really discuss, when we talk about agriculture, our focus as government and a lot of teaching is all about improving the arable and vegetable production and fruit production, so on. But this is also very important. And I think we need to keep in mind, as I mentioned, also play a huge role in the biodiversity and the ecological health of the agricultural landscape, to be sure. So they're adding more. And the prices are not that expensive, and you have a small land, the cost doesn't make a big difference. You know, if you're buying for 10,000 acres, any small difference, it will show like a big amount, so you'll be very careful. If I buy for 20 acres, it doesn't really make a difference. So they tend to add more fertilizers than they need to. They don't do a lot of soil testing. They just go by whatever the advisor will tell them to do. But the good thing is, because of the EU policies, and in some areas with a lot of fertilizer overuse that end up having a lot of pollution, groundwater pollution, the EU actually will pay farmers to reduce nitrogen fertilizers, to minimize nitrates. So in those areas, we have about 30% reduction in fertilizer use. So that was a good thing. And that was because of subsidies and government support programs. Now, pesticides, very similar. We have a lot of pesticide use by farmers. That also is an issue. And a lot of them don't even follow the main guidelines of protection. You're supposed to wear masks and so on. And you see them just driving the tractor and then reversing and going through this cloud of pesticide that is just applied and not really care about it. So that's one issue. Soil erosion is a big issue. We have a lot of rains in the winter, and a lot of farmers leave the land bare in the winter. The soil without any, the till, they leave it without any cover crops. So all winter long, we have a lot of erosion, and that's a major problem. Now, part of the regenerative agriculture is using cover crops, and one of my projects is to actually develop different cover crop systems where you can actually help farmers understand the value of the cover crops. They give fertility, protect the soil, and so on. So that's one of the big issues, but they're not very popular. I know in the US, in many areas, cover crops are very popular. I don't know the extent they're being used, but I know there's quite a bit of use and a lot of information. That's like in Greece. In the US, I know in California and all the extension agencies have a lot of information about the best cover crops to use. So that is another, I think we develop that knowledge for farmers to use. And then biodiversity, as I said earlier, a lot of the landscape is used to be a very traditional landscape. So as we are converting that to more intensive managed agricultural without maintaining diversity, then we lose a lot of biodiversity. So that's something to be very careful. It's good to increase productivity, but when it goes against biodiversity and so on, then we're going to have other problems later. So that's another issue. What else? So biodiversity, I think that's pretty much the biggest I can think of.
Do you have any, advice or a message that you might want to share with with farmers, students, or just the general public, and that who might be interested in sustainable agricultural practices?
Okay. Well, I think the main take-home message I want to give is that we have a really changing condition with climate change, and the environment is becoming under attack by a lot of our practices, and we cannot keep ignoring the impact we have on the environment and our health and our resources. So it's really important for everybody, it can be a huge farm, small little farm, to really start incorporating more ecological thinking on the farming, try to balance, productivity with actually maintaining quality of the soil, quality of the air and the region, and their own health, instead of maximizing profit, which is a lot of times the driving force. So there are a lot of ways to improve and maintain high profitability, but you don't have to sacrifice the environment, your soil base, and your resources, because those, once you lose them, you cannot regain them. And I think that's the main thing. And with climate change, things are going to become more challenging. So even if something worked in the past 50 years and you're doing okay, in the next 50 years, there are going to be a lot more challenges. So the more we preserve our soil, the more we preserve our resources, the better we'll be able to overcome those challenges.
We thank Dr. Vaskalisiotis for his expertise and knowledge about Greece's sustainable agricultural practices. As we switch gears from the olive groves of Greece to the cornfields of Iowa, we welcome Jack Campbell to our podcast.
My name is Jack Campbell. I am a junior majoring in agricultural business and international agriculture, and I am from DeWitt, Iowa, which is just north of the Quad Cities in eastern Iowa. I have grown up on a 7th generation row crop operation where we do mostly corn and soybeans and a little bit of seed corn.
Studying abroad in Greece must have provided you with a different perspective on agriculture. How did the Greek agriculture differ from what you've known in Iowa?
Absolutely. So I studied abroad in Thessaloniki, Greece at the Pyrrhus College of Agriculture for 3 months. I took classes over there that transferred back to Iowa State. Through this experience, we got some hands-on time working with the olive trees and the grapevines, and it really was an eye-opening experience to see that their level of precision agriculture is not up to the standards of the corn and soybeans here in the Midwest Corn Belt. So we did a lot of pruning of the olive trees. We worked with the some of the resources they had that harvested the olives, and they dropped down onto the mats where they collected them and put them into grates and whatever they did. I think 60% of the grapes that we used were used for olive oil, and then I think the rest was maybe only 10% was used as actual table olives. The most interesting, I think, eye-opening experience was when we had to apply fertilizer onto the olive trees, and normally this would look like a liquid fertilizer or something here, but over there we didn't have any gloves, and we just had a jar of glass, and we scooped up some nitrogen and dumped it onto the base of the tree. So that was kind of different than anything I've experienced through applying nitrogen onto row crops.
Our next question is, you come from a farm background in Iowa, specifically the row crops. So what are some of the sustainability practices that you use on your operation?
We do no-till for a lot of our acres. I think that is definitely a productive way to save erosion and not having to get any of the important nutrients that are in the first couple inches of the soil. And then we plant cover crops. We're trying to experiment with maybe a 3-season, if we can get 2 seasons of winter wheat in or something. And we're kind of trying to see if that could be productive, harvesting the wheat and able to store it, and while at the same time also using the root system as a cover crop. So that's something that we're doing. And our farm back home is 100% ran on solar. So we planted solar panels back on the farm in 2014, and I think we're only a couple of years away from being completely paid off and kind of just running on solar. So that's been a good experience that we're kind of happy with the outcome that's came from it.
Yeah. So you just touched on the solar. Will you share some other examples maybe of how technology and innovation have played a role in making farming more sustainable in Iowa agriculture?
Yeah, absolutely. John Deere's done a really good job with their headquarters being so close, and they're able to send representatives out to kind of talk to the farmers firsthand and see what works, what doesn't, and how they can change it. And I think one thing that's really impressed me is their ability to use the John Deere Farm Ops Center app, which anyone that runs Deere equipment, it can get synced to, and they can really see the data right there on their phone right as they're driving the tractor. And I think that's been really powerful for making not only just seed purchasing decisions, but seeing kind of what the ground looks like and what could be improved for future generations in the most sustainable ways possible.
I guess to compare that to when you were in Greece, were there any, technologies or innovations over there that, intrigued you?
Yeah, obviously the different use of brands and equipment, something that's really relevant. A lot of the equipment they used was a little bit outdated, and that's just the kind of the marketing mix of not being in the place that's most easy to access that. So, different uses of equipment causes different people to kind of not always know the way everything's ran when you're not in an area where everything's ran on Deere or everything's ran on Case IH. So you might be having a tractor that's a New Holland, or JCB was a popular brand over there. That's just kind of touching on the equipment. I wouldn't say technology's as prevalent over there, and we only worked really with what was on the farm. You go to some of the more higher production ag locations where maybe they have, a couple hundred or 1,000 acres of olive groves or vineyards. It'd be a little different than what we worked with, but we worked on the lower scale, dairy farms and olive groves that were just on campus.
So how do you see the role of small-scale family farms like those in Iowa in promoting sustainability?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to promote sustainability, but at the same time you want to make sure that you're staying as relevant and close to those small-scale families. There's a lot of controversy over, there's thousands of acres in eastern Iowa that are going to solar companies that are kind of buying out these fields, and they're paying the farmers a rate that they can't turn down, and they're able to sell their farm that's been a century farm or been in their family name for a long time because the amount that they're getting per month from these companies, it's just too good to turn down. So they're taking that, and it's for good reason, but at the same time you want to make sure you're staying true to your morals, and that ground might be right next to someone's house. That at the end of the day we believe in personal property rights, that it's that farmer's job. They can sell with whatever they want to. If they want to sell it to a farm or to a company that's going to turn into solar panels, they can do that. That's their property. But at the same time, is it good for the community? Is it good for the neighbors that are going to have solar panels that cover 400 acres around their house and they have to drive to the rest of their life? So I think making sure you're staying in attendance, you're going to the board meetings and the city council meetings that's covering this, that you can't make a difference unless you show up and you kind of speak your mind. So if you don't show up, then these companies will get away doing this, and it'll be a little different than the world you grew up in.
Are there any unique challenges that you see, or advantages? I guess it's kind of a two-part question. Are there any challenges that you see with sustainability, and are there any advantages with incorporating sustainability into your operation?
Well, I think there's a lot of room for growth. We had the chance back in 2020. We got struck with the derecho, and our entire bin operation blew down and was flattened. And so we kind of got the chance to build up from the ground up, and that's allowed for some different ways to make it a way that you maybe didn't like it the way before. Some rooms for growth, I think, would be if you can figure out, I mentioned it earlier, but the 3-season cover crops, if you can start planting cover crops as soon as you harvest the acres, harvest them in the spring, and then maybe plant on that same, that would be really beneficial. And you're not only, doing something that's good for the ground for planting cover crops, but you're also benefiting you're able to get some product out of it and some grain from the wheat maybe. So that's something that maybe we're looking into improving upon.
What message or advice do you have for fellow farmers, students, or policymakers interested in the sustainable agriculture of the United States?
I think it starts by getting involved. You look, whether you went to a community college, you went to a 4-year college, or you didn't go to college at all, you can still get involved in ways. You look at the Iowa Corn or an Iowa Soybean Association, and they have plenty of opportunities and meetings year-round that allow you to kind of stay up to date with what's going on in the ag community around you and the ag community that's far away from home, but it's all kind of stays relevant. And I think that's the number one piece of advice is, you can't make a difference unless you speak up. And so I think it all starts with joining all these organizations that are kind of in it for the benefit of the farmer, not just large corporations or the average citizen.
Everybody defines sustainability in a different way. What is, I guess, your definition of sustainability and how it is in agriculture?
Yeah, we, live in a world where everyone's going to want different things. Some people might want organic products. Some people just want the cheapest product. And it's our job as agriculturalists to feed a growing population that's surpassed 8 billion people. And we're getting less and less arable, tillable land that we can use to make the products that feed the world. So I think sustainability to me would definitely be defined as you're in it for the consumer and the ways that are healthy for the world around you. I think it's important that I think pesticides, herbicides they're necessary, but you still got to think about the bigger picture and make sure you're not polluting the environment around you and you're not over applying to the point that it's only benefiting you as that who gets the cash product at the end of the day. So I think whether it's applying anhydrous ammonia or putting, as long as you're not negatively affecting the environment around you, I think you can definitely be making a difference.
We've journeyed across continents from the rolling plains of Iowa to the ancient landscapes of Greece, exploring the world of sustainable agriculture through the eyes of experts, farmers, and advocates. Each guest has brought a unique story, wisdom, and insight to our podcast, but every journey must find its conclusion.
The message is clear. Sustainable agriculture knows no borders. It's a universal language spoken by those who nurture the land and believe in the potential of farming to heal the earth. From traditions that are generations old to cutting-edge innovations, from small family farms to vast fields, our journey has shown that sustainability is not a destination, but a continuous pursuit. We hope this podcast has illuminated the path forward, inspiring individuals, communities, and policymakers to embrace sustainable practices that safeguard the environment, feed the world, and empower local communities.
As we close this chapter, we encourage you to carry these stories, lessons, and insights with you. Let them germinate in your heart, and may they, like seeds in the soil, sprout into a more sustainable future for us all. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until we meet again, keep sowing the seeds of change and nurturing a greener, more responsible tomorrow. This has been an episode of Sustainability Across Borders. Farewell, and may your fields always be abundant and your harvests bountiful.
Thank you so much, Taylor and Madeline, for presenting a wonderful conversation about sustainability with our guests.
Yeah, and thank you to all of our wonderful guests that we had on the show. I thought the conversation about Greece's practices in comparison to American operations was very interesting. Sometimes we get caught up in our own heads thinking about what we do, and we kind of forget about what agriculture looks like outside of our small town, our state, and even our country. So I thought it was an interesting outlook.
I agree. I really like the advice about listening and not drawing lines in the sand about sustainability. We've all got different approaches to things, and we're all just trying our best to take care of ourselves and the planet.
Yeah, that's right, for sure. I couldn't agree anymore. There are so many aspects of sustainability that make it interesting and important to discuss. And I wanted to thank everyone for coming on to the show and hanging out with us and listening and talking to us about sustainability. And just as a reminder, don't forget to shoot us an email with any comments, questions, or concerns. We want to have awesome discussions with you that are based on your interest. Thanks again for listening, and we will see you next time on CAP. To email us with any comments, questions, or concerns, please send us an email at contemporary@iastate.edu.